Good evening. Mayor Moore, start off with you, please, sir. Please introduce yourself and give your qualifications to defeat the mayor of Franklin. Excuse me. You both have 3 minutes for this particular question, and then the rest of the questions you will have 10 minutes. 2 minutes.
10 sounds pretty good now, Bruce. Thank you a lot.
3 minutes for this question.
Well, welcome everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to have this forum at Westhaven. And I play golf out here, and so I know many of you. And thanks for coming, and particularly a thank you to the Westhaven Government Relations Committee. I'm not a politician by trade, but when I was practicing medicine, I got asked by the lobbyist for the Tennessee Medical Association to get involved with 3 significant pieces of legislation that was before that body. That was my introduction to politics, later followed by raising money from doctors for Lamar Alexander for president, and later many other Republican candidates through the years. My experience as a physician has helped me be a good mayor. One thing that I learned when I was practicing medicine is the axiom that they said, if you listen to the patient, they'll tell you what's wrong. Unfortunately, whenever I listen to them now, I can't put them to sleep and operate on them. But I've been very patient to listen. I have to say that being an elected official is a long continuum of learning, and I think that's the thing that I've enjoyed most about being an elected official is the learning process. And maybe there'll be a chance to talk about some of the things that I've learned and participated in. You know, I can talk about water, I can talk about sewer, I can talk about transportation, I can talk about air quality, I can talk about the opioid crisis, I can talk about mental health. All those things are things that I've been involved with that would help qualify me to continue to be your mayor. This has been one of the greatest honors of my life, to be your mayor. My wife is here tonight. She's a Franklin original. Her mother was born here, and we can date her family back to land grant after the Revolutionary War. Her stories about Franklin when we didn't live here taught me so much, how she loved her place where she grew up. And whenever she told me that we were moving here, I immediately fell in love with it because she told me to. I look forward to this opportunity tonight to discuss the issues that are before us. I look forward to be transparent and talk about facts and not fiction.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Hanson.
That's okay. Hi. What qualifies me? I've been an alderman for almost 2 years in this community. I have tackled some pretty significant things head on, not being shy and not being afraid to address issues such as a church that was having their zoning taken away from them. That church, the pastor lives in this community. In addition to being your alderman, I have also served on the Realtor Political Action Committee for many years and also won awards for Tennessee. We're a lobbying group for the Realtor Association and for your property rights and taxes and crazy things that people want to do about your property. So we hire lobbyists to negotiate on your part, won accolades on a national level for the state of Tennessee when I served with the National Association of Realtors on their RPAC participation committee. And I got LLC coverage passed with a state senator in Tennessee so that realtors can be paid as a corporation, an LLC, a different type of organization than just a sole proprietorship. And what that does is it retains significant tax dollars in the state of Tennessee, but it takes a large tax burden off of the realtor. Many other states were able to do it, but Tennessee did not have the language. So I have worked with our state legislation to help craft that language about 3 or 4 years ago when we had the Trump Tax Acts passed. I live in a neighborhood. I love the neighborhood. We have a lot of challenges coming, not afraid to tackle them. A lot of experience with governmental affairs on many different levels and dealing with legislation. So I would be proud to serve you as your next mayor.
Great, thank you very much. Alderman Hanson, this next question is for you. You start off. The office of the mayor only votes to break ties in the BOMA. Legally, we have a weak mayor system. The major responsibility of the office would appear to be the ability to be the face of Franklin. How are you more qualified to be our face than your opponent?
Well, that's true. We have a weak mayor system, and that is a tiebreaker. But according to our city charter, the mayor very much sets the tone of the city. He gives directive to the city manager. So that means things that we see coming in front of us with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen should have originated many times with our mayor. And that goes for our cultural identity as well. So I personally don't believe we've had a mayor that was protective of that cultural identity of our children, of our values, our traditional values in this community. And I think it's put us in risk of being under some divisive agendas that we've seen in other areas nationally. So I'm super protective about things that will keep our taxes low, things that will decrease the crime that is increasing in our community, that will keep development strong when we've seen it drop 45% like we have recently, and also make sure that we are going to remain that hallmark community that all of us left these larger cities for and other parts of the country to come back to a place that we thought was the last sane bastion in America. And that's my whole goal, and that's what I believe the mayor's role should be, is to set that tone, and that's right in line with our city charter.
Thank you. Mayor Moore, would you like me to repeat the question? I forgot to tell you have 2 minutes for the remaining questions, by the way.
Sure. Go ahead and repeat it again just for the audience.
Yes, sir. The office of mayor only votes to break ties in the BOMA. Legally, we have a weak mayor system. The major responsibilities of the office would appear to be the ability to be the face of Franklin. How are you more qualified to be our face than your opponent?
Well, you're exactly right. The charter indicates that we have a weak mayor system, which means that I vote only to break ties. The other requirement of our city charter is that I report to the city once a year on the state of the city. I'm also required to lead the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and Alderman Hanson is exactly correct that there are certain policies and things that I bring up, but also they're brought up by the aldermen. I do think that you're correct that I am, as mayor, the face of the city. If you'll look at what my activity is as far as a member of the Regional Transit Authority, currently the chairman of the Mayor's Caucus from Middle Tennessee, 70 mayors, 2 million people, member of the Transportation Policy Board, member of the Greater Nashville Regional Council, the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee, the Air Board, the Opioid Abatement Council. All those are things where I represent the city of Franklin. So it's really not a part-time job. Some of the job requires creativity, and you can make the job what you think is best for your city. And that's the effort I've made since I've been mayor, is to continue to create what the mayor's job looks like and represent our city all across the region.
Thank you. I did misspeak. There will be 2 questions that you answer first, and then we'll go to the next opponent. They'll answer 2 questions first as well. So this next question actually goes back to you, Alderman Hanson. Since the office of mayor is somewhat restricted by the weak mayor system, how would you use the office to promote the best interests of Franklin?
I think each and every representative works to represent the best interests of Franklin, but actually, once elected, I would like to start an exploratory committee to see if it would be practical to change that weak mayor system and go to a strong mayor system where an actual CEO level mayor is elected and paid more of a living wage versus the $20,000 a year I think he's paid for all that work and all those committees. I do think that it's time to at least evaluate it. I don't know that it's going to be the right decision, but I think it's one that should be pursued and examined because we have grown significantly since the charter was first formed for our community. And I do see a need. We have a very hefty paycheck for our city manager, and I think we need more collaboration from the top, and that would be one of my top goals.
Thank you.
Repeat again, please.
Yes, sir. Since the office of mayor is somewhat restricted by the weak mayor system, how would you use the office to promote the best interests of Franklin?
Well, I don't think there is a restriction. There's a lot of latitude within the office of mayor to be involved with a lot of things, whether it's those things that I just mentioned to you, but also it's an opportunity to be involved with the community. My wife and I have been very, very active in so many nonprofits in our community, and we're glad to be part of those. Those are an important part of our community, whether we're talking about Friends of Franklin Parks or the Heritage Foundation, and on and on and on and on as far as those. So I don't consider it a restrictive office. I think it's an opportunity to be creative as far as how you represent your community and interact with your community.
Thank you. Mayor Moore, this next question starts off with you. In the past year, you have both been involved in controversial decisions. Mayor Moore cast a tie-breaking vote in the Gay Pride Festival permit issuance, and Alderman Hanson approached a constituent concerning a contribution to the Juneteenth celebration for which she was found to be in violation of the city's ethics code. Could each of you explain why you chose to pursue the positions you took on those issues?
Sure. Thanks for that question. And by the way, Alderman Hanson voted in 2022 for the Pride Festival, and during her campaign in 2021, she didn't mention it. So I did vote to break the tie on the Pride Festival, and I did it for basically, I think it's 4 reasons just off the top of my head. One would be that the board altered the application process for events. We've never asked any event who's going to be there and what they do. We don't do it for pilgrimage. We don't do it for Main Street. We don't do it for Pumpkin Fest. So that was one. They complied completely with the application process that the board presented them. Secondly, there's municipal code, which is clear as far as what can be turned down and what can be promoted. Third is the Constitution of the United States of America. And lastly, based on legal advice, we have to use our city attorney for legal advice, and she advised that we would have multiple lawsuits based on a denial. There were outside lawyers that opined privately with me that that was the correct decision, and also I had that reinforced by a pretty noted constitutional scholar. So I felt very comfortable with taking that position. So,
thank you. Alderman Hanson.
Well, the B&A decision was driven strictly by my constituents and their request to stop social justice movements within the city of Franklin that they feel are a danger. We are very supportive of our police department. We are very supportive of all the measures that they take to protect us. And the social justice movement is about defunding the police. We do not want to support defunding the police in this community. And the constituents had asked me, please, please, please intervene. We don't want this to continue on in the community. At the same token, this was not just about Juneteenth. There's another group who was shunned the year before. Many of you saw my presentation in June of 2022 when the city had intervened between Franklin Justice and Equity and Alma McLemore, who had had Juneteenth for about 20 years. And they had forced Alma McLemore to give up her Juneteenth and participate with Franklin Justice and Equity, a BLM-type organization, against her wishes, and they tried to extort an extravagant amount of money. I heard up to $100,000 to be a co-sponsor, of which she was mortified, did not have the money. And Eric and the mayor, Eric Stuckey, our city manager, and the mayor both said and told me, yeah, it was a really rocky road. It was a real roller coaster, because you have 2 diametrically opposed agendas between these 2 organizations. So I was there the year before. I was the one that went to the mayor and the city manager to find out what went on. A lot of the residents in this neighborhood and throughout Franklin ended up getting behind Alma McLemore in 2022, and she successfully went back to her McLemore house and had her event for Juneteenth, and it was a raving success, and she continued again this year. So that is why the letter to BNA also was written, and the board of directors and the CEO, neither one knew that the money went there.
Thank you. Mayor Moore, this question is to you.
May I respond to some of her comments?
No, sir. You have the ability to answer, or excuse me, ask 3 questions at the end, and you can get that there. This is built to be a forum as opposed to an actual debate.
I'm ready.
Okay, this question goes to you first. What do you see as the major challenges facing Franklin in the coming 4 years, and how would you address them?
Well, I think the number one is concern about the charm of our city. It's taken 40 years to create what Franklin is. It started with Main Street many years ago, and it's continued to evolve for many years. Certainly growth is a challenge, but we've been growing for 20 years at 2,000 people a year. So managing growth is not a new thing to the city of Franklin. We have a number of tools already that help us with growth. And earlier you heard the conversation about Envision Franklin, which is actually the citizens of Franklin's vision for how areas of our city should grow. We have a transportation plan that's linked to that land use plan. We have a zoning ordinance that codifies it and reinforces it. We also have infrastructure that we install that controls growth. If we can't provide the appropriate infrastructure, that controls or manages growth also.
Thank you.
Oh, and the major challenges, housing continues to be a challenge for us, primarily in the workforce range. Transportation, we continue to see increasing congestion on our roads, and we know that that's only going to get worse. And lastly, workforce, which we anticipated we'd have more jobs than we had people in 20 years. It happened much sooner because of COVID.
Thank you. Alderman Hanson.
Challenges the next 4 years. Number one is infrastructure, and the several $100 million of our money it's going to take to build that out. We want to look at every single possibility, all the way from utility districts to our own funding. How does this get paid for? What does it look like? What's the most efficient, cost-effective way to pay for it without burdening the taxpayer? Number two is preserving our culture and not being asleep and letting divisive agendas from across our country and across the globe trickle into our precious traditional community and erode our value system. Also concerned about keeping our taxes as low as possible. We enjoy the lowest taxes in the state of Tennessee right now for our size of city, and we need to keep it that way. We need to really watch the money that we spend, and we also need to make our city hall and our government system more accessible to you, the public, and other people. They need to be at those meetings. They need to know what's coming up. You need to have a say. You need to be informed, and you need to know who's leading the city, who's working in the departments, and be a part of the entire process.
Thank you. These next 2 questions will go to you, Alderman Hanson, first. While we all enjoy low taxes here, we also enjoy the quality of life that Franklin provides. How do you plan to maintain that balance during the next 4 years?
Again, it all wraps around to the culture. If you keep your culture to the expectation of the people who moved here to call it home, you're going to have satisfied citizens, you're going to retain good property values, you're going to have a solid tax base. Most of our money is raised from sales tax, so more people are going to want to come in and spend money. We need a convention center. We need to bring more people in during the week and fill our hotels, our restaurants, our shopping to create more revenue to keep your taxes low. I think we also need to relook at City Hall and these costs, and instead of turning it into a palace or a Taj Mahal, we need a really nice Class A office building And I do believe we can save the money and possibly even pay cash if we do that. But I know he and I don't always agree on that, but it is all about saving money. I'm very, very prudent when it comes to your taxpayer dollars.
Thank you, Alderman Hanson. Mayor Moore?
I'm confused. No, I know the question. I'm confused that you're going to ask her two questions.
I'm confused as well. I thought it was back and forth, but
Okay. Well, I'm going to answer this question. How's that? I mean, my 2 minutes starts now.
yes, sir.
We have the lowest property tax rate of any city our size in the state of Tennessee, and we've achieved that for several reasons. One is we have a very high sales tax. In sales tax receipts, took me a minute. And secondly, our second greatest resource for revenue is state shared, which is what the state returns to us based on our population. And then the property tax is third. There are a number of ways that we've been able to do this to provide infrastructure, and one is that we're one of the few cities in the state that have impact fees. So we have water and sewer impact fees and road impact fees and facility impact fees, so on and so forth. And those fees we regularly evaluate to make sure that they're keeping up. We ask developers to pay for development. We're not burdening the taxpayer with those. Alderman Hanson mentioned tourism. We had a record year last year. We're number 6 market in the state of Tennessee. $1.19 billion spent in the city of Franklin. That saves everybody between $1,100 and $1,200 of tax money every single year, just off the top of my head. So they're spending millions every single day. We want to continue to encourage that. The reason we want to encourage it, the reason they want to come is because we've created a culture here that's attractive for people to visit. We have a wonderful main street. We have a wonderful shopping area. We have wonderful historic resources such as Carnton and the Carter House and the Lotes House. We've preserved Battlefield when we were considered to be a lost cause. We now have almost 30 acres of battlefield land, and that process is not over yet.
Thank you, Mayor.
But the talking's over.
Thank you. This next question is for you, Alderman Hanson. What is your position on the location of a new city hall and the various costs of building the present site, the Hill property site, or any other site that was considered?
I was very open to alternative sites. My number one requirement is that whatever we built needed to have retail to continue to pay our taxpayers back long after our building is paid for, and to create a reason to draw people to City Hall and activate streetscape, regardless of where it was. But what's most important to me is, as I travel around the country and I do a ton of road tripping, almost every City Hall I see is next to a police station. It's not just downtown, it's next to a police station. It's more of a civic complex. I could see a lot of benefit moving it next to the police station when that opportunity presented itself. I also know that government is not good about reining in spending, and their numbers are extravagantly high when they don't need to be. We can see this in our own federal government. And it's no different here, and it's not that they aren't prudent or aren't wise, but that's not their foray. So I have taken this City Hall schematic. I've taken every number that we've had. I have fielded it out to 4 global, well-known, respected commercial real estate firms. I said, price this building for me, Class A office space. None of them came in at over about $800 a foot versus the $1,000 a foot that we're getting quoted. I know there's money that can be saved in this. I know we don't have to build a Taj Mahal. We don't have to have the sweeping grand staircase for almost $1 million inside this open building that's been driven by staff recommendations and requirements. We can deliver a wonderful building at a cost savings to you, still be effective, efficient, and it'll be wonderful for the next 100 years.
Thank you.
The location for City Hall was vetted 3, 4, 5 years ago by the community in multiple community meetings. And overwhelmingly at that time, the citizens of Franklin said they wanted to stay on the square. There was a monkey wrench thrown in there whenever Jimmy Granberry was visiting City Hall, and he had lost his potential grocer that was going to be on the property there on Columbia, and he says, let's just swap. Well, I know Jimmy. Jimmy's a joker, and I just kind of brushed it off. Well, he sent a letter to every single alderman saying he wanted to swap property. And so I applaud the board who said, well, let's look at that property and other properties within a certain radius. We did. And what we found out is that building a city hall on the Hill property was no cheaper. Building it on the old Methodist Church property was no cheaper. The building's a building. What you need to know is that $100 million price tag that we're talking about has an underground parking garage, which we badly need, but it also addresses inflation for the project. It also addresses relocation of everybody in City Hall. So those are big numbers also. I can tell you that we're going to be value engineering. That's what you do, is value engineer projects to cut out the waste and the fat. And we do need to have a nice city hall. I haven't seen anything that I think is lavish and luxurious, and having a stairway where people can meet and greet adds some ambience to the city hall. So I want it downtown, where it is.
Thank you, Mayor. The next two questions will be asked of you first.
Okay.
Westhaven is a growing community, a city within a city, and therefore will need greater police presence, street maintenance, traffic enforcement, emergency services, and the like. How do you plan to establish the level of those services commensurate with our growth?
Well, the city has a plan of repaving streets, and Westhaven streets would be on that long-range plan. As the city grows, sales tax revenue increases, so we would be increasing the number of police and fire that are needed to make sure that you have the coverage. By the way, we have a CALEA certified police department, the top ranking that's available, and our fire department, which y'all are fortunate to have one of the stations here. We're ISO 1. That means that your insurance rates are the lowest possible they can be. So I think our current tax revenue, not our tax, but our revenue structure addresses those needs as we grow, and we'll be able to plan that in our budgets.
Thank you. Alderman Hanson, same question.
Westhaven, it's like a whole nother world, isn't it? It's a city within a city. And because of that, there's miles of roads. We do have our own fire station. We have our own school. There is not going to be a police station out here, from what I understand, no substation, although we feel like there was always space with that fire department. But I did run a quiet initiative with the city to get LPRs, license plate readers. We did have one out here on Westhaven Boulevard quietly to monitor any traffic of an incident that might occur, say the people we would see on our cameras coming down the driveways at 3 a.m. So if you had a white SUV and a robbery at 3 a.m., they could check that LPR and see if there was a plate that was tagged, or if a car was stolen, or there was an Amber Alert. That's one of the ways. Don't want to track anybody, don't believe in smart cities, don't believe in 15-minute cities, but I do believe in being proactive, especially when we believe we live in such a safe neighborhood and sometimes our guard is down. It's super important to know that we have multiple steps to catch people who are coming into our community or doing things within our community. And we do have tax revenue, city streets programs. We do not have our own water system. We're on city waters. I do know that our water bills are really high, guys. I've seen others across the city, and for whatever reason, HB&TS has given us nice, hefty water bills compared to some other areas. But we are a city within a city, and I think they've done a beautiful job. It was truly a master planned community, and Southern Land has done a great job. And because our homes are so tight, we know each other, we're out walking, we meet each other, and there is a level of safety with that.
Thank you. Mayor, what is your second question? What is your vision for public transportation in Franklin? Is this a viable option for Franklin to undertake, either on its own or as part of a multi-municipal effort?
Let me take that in several different ways. First of all, we have a Franklin Transit Authority that addresses the needs of people in our community, particularly people with disabilities, people that are going through drug court, people that aren't able to afford a car. And the Franklin Transit Authority is doing a good job on that and staying within their means. And certainly it's heavily subsidized by grants and so on. That system continues to modernize, and there are new elements that they're going to be introducing into it, more of a Uber type something within Cool Springs area where there's a critical need to keep people out of their cars during the noonday. Let's talk about the Southern Corridor. The Southern Corridor was studied a few years ago, and basically we looked at light rail, passenger rail, and bus on shoulder. Those were options that had pretty significant cost. When we looked at the Transportation Modernization Act, which just passed in the General Assembly, where they can do P3s and choice lanes, that's an opportunity that I think is a new opportunity for us, because buses will be able to get on those choice lanes and ride free, which would eliminate that bus on shoulder issue, which would cost a whole lot of money. We're going to be addressing it in a lot of different ways. We have adaptive signal control. We have signal timing studies that we're doing, new technologies occurring there. We know that they're going to be with autonomous vehicles. There's going to be more and more options moving forward. We're in love with our cars.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Hanson, same question.
You will never see me support public transportation. We do have the transit system. It's about $40 a ride is the number I saw it broken down to. That's pretty expensive per ride, but it's a dire need service in our community. There are many people that use it regularly for doctor's visits, grocery visits, visiting family. It's beautiful to get on the little trolley and ride, and it's safe, and it gets you from point A to point B. But I'm telling you, no public transportation. It will cause us to hemorrhage financially. It will change our entire socioeconomic system in this community. It is not something we want. It is not something we can afford. I know it is on the plans, because every time I meet with a land planner, they say, this is the transit hub. And I go, oh, is that for Uber, Lyft, DoorDash? Oh, no, it's for the buses. I'm like, no buses, no light rail. We love our cars. We like to drive. We're not doing public transportation on our dime.
Thank you. Alderman Hanson, this last question is for you to start. Ethical conduct in government has recently arisen as an issue in Franklin. What will you do to make sure Franklin government is run on a strictly ethical basis?
Well, we have two people who were brought before the ethics board. Mayor Moore was, and I was as well. I do believe we need to look at our ethics and change it somewhat. There have been other things that have occurred at our city hall that needed to be addressed that didn't fall within those guidelines. As a realtor, we do have NAR ethics, and it's a little different viewpoint through a telescope. But no, it should be adhered to. It should be followed. And I agree that if I deserved the ethics violation, then I should have received it. But when you have your constituents asking you to do something, it's a little different than somebody taking the onus on themselves to do it. But I do believe we should have it. I think it should be enhanced. We are missing some language in our ethics. We just took the MTAS, and that's what we use, is just the rubber stamp. It's the state standard.
Thank you.
I appreciate your bringing up that I came before the Ethics Commission, and I appreciate you also mentioning that you were brought up. I was found not to have violated the ethics code. We do have a current process, and I'm not against reviewing some of the processes. There is a process for citizens. That's called the Ethics Commission. I had the honor to appoint that Ethics Commission, and it was completely supported by a unanimous vote of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. There are people on that that I know I've been told that they were all my very close friends. They're probably going to tell you, if you talk to them, a few of them know me, okay? I think ethics is something that we take an oath on. We also sign with the document with the state as far as conflict of interest. So I think ethics are very important in politics, that you're transparent and clear as far as your actions, and that you're truthful with those actions.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the prepared questions. We now will allow 3 questions each, rotating back and forth between the candidates. Each candidate is allowed to ask a question of the other, of their opponent. They will be given 2 minutes to respond to that question, and then they are also able to rebut that with another 2 minutes. So each question has a potential for 4 total minutes. Once again, I'd like to remind everybody, no outbursts. Please be as well behaved as you already have been. I greatly appreciate it. Since Alderman Hanson started that last question, Mayor Moore, I'm going to give you the opportunity to start us off on this question and answer period. Go ahead.
Do I get 2 minutes to ask the question?
No, sir. You get 2 minutes.
Thank goodness.
The
questions aren't all that long. Today is the 6-month anniversary of the Covenant shooting. This was a senseless tragedy that occurred where 3 children and 3 adults were murdered, and countless numbers of children were left traumatized by what they experienced. You made some comments about the shooting that were hurtful and very insensitive to the Covenant families. Have you apologized, or do you plan to apologize to the Covenant families for what you said?
Well, I think I've apologized to the entire public, and yes, I did say something. And what happens when you have lunch, dinner, and you're around people of high level ranking within the state, within other communities, you have access to information sometimes that you forget other people don't have direct access to. There's so many times, because of the people I'm around regularly, I hear things that not the average Joe hears. And Matt Murphy had gotten me on the radio, and he asked me, he said he wanted to ask me about pride, and then he forayed off into this other direction. And I said what I knew, and he was very belligerent, and it never, ever was meant to come across insensitive, because 6 lives were needlessly lost, and hundreds of lives are forever impacted. They'll never be the same. The families, the children, they'll never be the same after going through that. It was horrific. It was horrible. And the sad thing is that none of us have an answer yet, and there's still division there, with one group saying no manifest, another group saying yes, let it out. And none of us have any answers. We had a special session that still didn't get us any answers or resolution to anything, or any help with mental health, which was what I was really hoping would come out of special session, because we do need more mental health care. But no, I never meant to be insensitive. And being not only an elected official, but just the people that I'm around, I do have access to certain types of information. And no, I will not reveal my source on this, but someday I hope that the truth will come out, and people will know that I did know some things that happened, and I'm sorry if anyone in any way was offended.
Your comments have been debunked. Would you apologize to the Covenant families that are here right now publicly?
That's not the question and answer. You had 2 minutes.
I get to debunk what you said. I said, will you
But there was
now,
no other
at this moment,
opportunity for me.
apologize to the Covenant
I
families?
just did, Mayor Moore.
Would you clarify it? I thought it was kind of walking around it.
No, I just
Please
did.
clarify it.
Okay,
It's not clear.
thank you.
No.
You have 2 minutes to respond. So thank you. We'll move on. Yeah, you have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then 2 minutes to rebut the question. I just want to be clear on
I
that.
rebutted it.
Fair enough. Alderman Hanson, you have the question now. You're able to ask your opponent one question.
With the central bank digital currency coming online in the next 18 months, and all of our financial systems will be forever changed, cash may go away, and we may lose the value that we currently have in our assets. What contingent plans has the city done to address this, not only with our city's money, but what proactive preparedness have you done in order to assist the citizens through this harrowing time as we face something that none of us have ever had to go through before?
First of all, we have a chief financial officer. She trained at Carnegie Mellon, and I really respect her opinion. By state law, we're required to have a financial advisor for everything we do. Every year we get the budget award for what we do for many, many years. Just recently, I was involved with a meeting with people that manage our extra money and how they invest that money, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of stop gaps as far as the money we have. So I feel very confident in where we're at with that situation.
I know that we are financially prudent and we have our financial management within the city is excellent. But my concern is the conversion of all of our currency that are currently sitting in our cash assets, like checking accounts, savings accounts, investments, in the digital currency, where we may or may not get a one-to-one trade-off. We may get less money. And I just didn't know if the city had a preparedness plan in place, not only for the city, but for the citizens, because this is not an if or a when. It is going to happen. It's on the books. It's federal legislation. We got a little bit of a stay last week in Congress, but I think it's concerning to many people in the room. But thank you for your response.
Mayor Moore.
We'll be on top of it.
Mayor Moore, this is the second question now. You get your second question.
Oh, okay. You've been very outspoken in this campaign about the importance of transparency. We've seen the one video where you released admitting to an incident where you were charged with a felony. In the interest of transparency and providing answers for the voters, can you confirm whether there have been other criminal charges against you from your past? And if so, how many and what were the charges?
Well, I don't know what you read, but maybe it was a Phil Williams report, but it wasn't a felony. I pled no contest to a misdemeanor. It was the same level as a speeding ticket. There was a charge that they tried to levy before they knew what the extent of the situation was, which was money laundering, but they dropped it because they found out that the modeling and entertainment company that I'd answered the phone for from my home before we had cell phones and computers, actually I had nothing to do with their money, with any kind of transaction. I simply answered the phone, provided the information to the owners, gave them phone numbers and dates at the end of my shift. It was a $10 an hour job with the potential to $12 an hour, when most good wages were paying $5.50 to $5 an hour at that time. I had been in college almost 13 years at that point, and I literally had no idea that they had a hefty casting couch going on as well. And I certainly didn't want to end my college career with that laying on me when I was heading to Chicago for a new job. So I pled no contest versus paying an attorney and staying and trying to fight it with thousands of dollars that I did not have. I was a college student doing everything I could all those years to get through school and then go on to something better. So any of you can watch my video on Instagram. So I don't know where you got your information, but it is not accurate. It is written. I have copies of it myself, as does my team, and they'll be glad to share any of that with anybody here that wants it. It is transparent. I am not running from it. It happened when I was in my late 20s. I graduated from high school when I was 16. My parents wanted me to go to college, but they never funded any of it. So I worked 2 jobs in Longview, Texas, went to Kilgore College. When I ran out of classes I could take, I had to go somewhere else. And by a miracle, I got into SMU in Dallas. It was expensive. I had to continue to work.
Thank you. Mayor Moore, you have 2 minutes for rebuttal if you'd like.
I appreciate your clarification on that it was a no contest charge, but I understand that at least somewhere people are saying there were other charges, that you were using an alias. There was something about money laundering, and if you're wanting to be transparent, I understand some of those records are embargoed. That may not be quite the correct term. Will you have those records released to the public?
No, we'll move on now. Alderman Hanson, you can ask your second question.
So we all know that the Pride event happened. We know how it happened. We all know I voted no, and we know why Mayor Moore voted yes. But the very lawsuits they were hoping to present has probably led to a lawsuit that the city will never be able to dig their way out of, because we denied entry at that event to ladies who had a Bible in their purse. But we allowed a lady with a switchblade to go in because she looks like one of them. Then we asked a group of people, these were our police, to leave the park and go take their First Amendment rights across the street because they were praying. And then the worst, it's going to cost the city a lot of money, most likely, is Joe Caccini was arrested for wearing a Jesus shirt and talking softly and calmly with someone at a church booth at the Pride Festival. He was arrested. July 27th, there was a case hearing. The city chose not to drop it. September 5th, there was a hearing. City chose not to drop it. Now, November 7th, Joe Caccini is up for trial for professing his faith in Christ at Harlansdale Farm and wearing a Jesus shirt. Many tales have come from it, and the only clarification I'm asking for, many have said it was the organizer who initiated the arrests, but even more, including our own police department, has said those orders come from the mayor's office. And I think that many people would like to know exactly what happened, because it was a public event on public space, but other things are out there, and that's where rumor, innuendo, and gossip get us all in trouble. And I think we'd all like to hear what really happened.
Sure, I wasn't there, but I have viewed the body camera footage. The body camera footage shows the person that she mentioned telling people they're not Christians. They took the man to the police department to book him. The entire ride to the police station, he was telling them they weren't Christian. It wasn't about praying. It was about him, his activity. And so since they rented the entire park, just like when Heritage Foundation rents downtown, they can tell people to leave. Their event organizer asked the man to leave. He refused. Their private security, which they paid for, asked him to leave. He said no. And then our police, who they paid for, asked him to leave, and he said no. And they escorted him to the edge of the property and offered him to be able to be where the protesters were. So that's the truth.
Thank you. Alderman Hanson, you have 2 minutes if you'd like a rebuttal.
And of course, there's no way for you to respond back, but the whole question was, did it come from the organizer, or was it initiated out of the mayor's office? Because there's been a lot of confusion about that.
I'd love to address that. Let me address that, because our police had special training.
I'm sorry. The way we set it up was
okay.
3 questions. This is your 3rd question. We're in round 3. We're going to start with you. Please ask your question of your opponent.
You've talked a lot about the importance of land preservation over the past couple of months in your campaign. At the September 12th meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, you were in beer board. The board subsequently voted 7-0 to move forward with purchase of land that will increase Harlansdale Park by about 30% and protect from development a large piece of land that serves the Franklin Road gateway into downtown. You were in the room for beer board, but then left and never returned to the work session or to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for that vote. Can you explain why you missed this vote and you didn't take the unique opportunity to support preservation?
Sure can. I was trying to pass a kidney stone. If anybody's ever had a kidney stone, holy Toledo, that thing is so tiny and it hurts like fire. So I had suffered through as much as I could. My kidney stone was killing me. I ended up about a week later having it pulverized. So that's why I was not there. But I am excited about preservation of that corner. I am concerned about the letter from the Methodist Church that was sent to several of their members that they have since shared with me. They said the Methodist Church wasn't quite to the level of agreement or on board with this project of swapping the land and buying more land and this whole trade out that was shared with us. We thought it was kind of a done deal. They just have to run it through their regional boards and their church body to approve it. But they're not even to that point yet, according to the letter they sent to their membership. So I don't really know where we are, but it looks like we're giving some of them, the mayor's friends, a couple $1 million because they got into a really big loan at high interest rate and it's a little uncomfortable and it might cost us more money. And then I remember Rod Heller saying he wanted to build Studio 10 right there on that piece of land where the track is. So are we really going to keep that for preservation on that track, or is Studio 10 going to somehow end up being built there? So there's just still a lot of questions, but the #1 goal is to preserve that corner of Franklin Road and Mac Hatcher. Absolutely, absolutely got to preserve that corner.
Well, I'm glad you passed your kidney stone. I thought I got a rebuttal.
I'm sorry, my bad. You're right ahead.
I'm confused. I asked the question and I thought I could
Yeah, he does.
I apologize.
It's about as confusing to me as it is to you, I think.
Thank you. So this was your question. She just answered it. You have 2 minutes to reply.
Yes, sir. First United Methodist Church is my church, and I've had multiple conversations with the head of the church board and also with Brian Brooks, the pastor. Their process is a lot like the federal government. It does have a number of steps to go through. But in principle, I think the will is there to sell the city, the property that adjoins Harlansdale Park, which has a historic racetrack on it, and also the historic McMahon House. That would increase Harlansdale Park by about 30%. You mentioned my friends. Well, I guess I do have a lot of friends, but I'll probably, like a lot of us, we only have 2 or 3 that we can confide in. So I meet people every single day and glad to call them friends, but these aren't people that are doing me any special favors, and I'm not doing them any special favors.
Thank you, sir. I apologize for interrupting you. It's a little confusing up here. All right. Alderman Hanson, the third and final question goes to you.
Last summer, we were all alerted to a FOIA request, which is an open records request for information. On that was the name Bob Ravner. Subsequently, in the spring, someone delivered a large stack of paperwork to me and potential filing that they were making with the Office of Special Counsel for a Hatch Act violation, which is a federal offense. It's under federal law for politicking on city emails, on city space, on a partisan election. And it appeared from these documents that were filed as a violation with the Office of Special Counsel and with our Attorney General as a Little Hatch Act that Alderman Matt Brown and Mayor Kim Moore had numerous counts of politicking for Bob Ravner, who's running for state representative, on city time, city email, in our city office, encouraging others through our city emails to support his campaign. Those have been filed. I am wondering if we've ever heard back from the Office of Special Counsel or Attorney General, because under the Hatch Act, the only penalty is a resignation and a 2-year salary forfeiture to the federal government. It applies to cities and states and employees who are involved with federal funding. And I actually have a package you can take with you today of those, along as the Hatch Act, if you'd like to take one home with you for your reference.
I'm familiar with the Little Hatch Act. The Hatch Act has to do with federal money and utilizing federal money for other purposes. Since our organization chart and the weak mayor system, I never get to vote on federal funding. Our budget always passes unopposed. Certain grants that we have always pass unopposed. I've had a conversation with my attorney. I've had a conversation with the city attorney, and we'll look forward to clearing my name from this. I'm not going to go into what those comments were about Bob Ravner. That was the subject of the ethics violation. I was cleared from it.
No further comment. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the mayoral forum.